So hello everyone, we're starting now. As you asked in Mentor Hub, so we've been, as you know, first of all, we've been doing different webinars and talks on different topics in education and in particular in teaching and learning English language. And one of the frequently asked questions was about Aptis. So we asked the British Council to help us out with this and organize a webinar on this theme. And the British Council was so kind and invited their big team, global team, to talk, both local and global, right? So that you can address all your issues and worries and questions. So I'm going to hand to Umida Nurjanova so that she can moderate the webinar today. So Umida.
Thank you, Nadira. Thank you very much. Good evening, dear participants. Well, good morning, as we found out, good afternoon and good evening. And thank you for finding time and attending this webinar today, where we will talk about the Aptis for Teachers test. You know, Aptis is a buzzword for many English language teachers in our country these days. And I'm really grateful to Nadira for initiating this talk, this live session, and inviting us today. For those of you who still haven't heard about this test, Aptis is a computer-based test developed by British Council experts in language assessment. It is used by a variety of organizations like universities, schools, governments in more than 85 countries. It is also recognized as a valid proof of English proficiency by ministries, educational institutions, and regional governments across the world, including Uzbekistan. And you probably heard that Aptis for Teachers is an officially recognized qualification by the State Testing Center. Well, I'm going to stop at this point because my colleagues have prepared the presentations and will tell you everything about this test. And we suggest that the first part of our session today will be the actual presentations, and then we will have the question and answer session where you will be able to ask all your questions about Aptis test and how to prepare for this test, how to get registered for this test, and etc. And I'm delighted to introduce my colleagues, the speakers of our today's session. We have Fiona Mitchell. Fiona is a global commercial development manager from the global assessment teams. And this team is responsible for developing and managing the Aptis test. Fiona has extensive experience of the TESOL and education sectors across such countries as Spain, Portugal, and Italy. Originally, she has a teaching background with a master's degree in TESOL, and she is a linguist herself with her first degree in modern languages. I'm also happy to introduce another colleague from the Global Assessment team, Antoaneta Jordanova, who is a Market Development Manager in the Global Assessment teams. Antoaneta has played a fundamental role in the development of Aptis over the years, with her research into the testing needs and experiences of institutions and individuals around the world. She has 14 years experience of working in the British Council examinations and assessment teams. and she has profound market and product knowledge in this area. Also, today at our webinar, we have the colleagues from the local British Council office, and this is Amir Said Sadikov, a business development coordinator, and Andrei Maksakov, who is the exams operations manager. And I'm really happy to have our partners, long-term partners at our call today, Avazbek Abosov and Nasimbek Lutfiev, who represent the State Testing Center. So without further ado, I'm going to give floor to Fiona and Antoinette. Over to you.
Thank you, Mida. Thanks very much for the introduction, and good evening, everyone. I'm really happy and excited to be here, and thanks to Nadira for inviting us and for this opportunity to speak to you today and tell you more about the Aptis test. And I'm really hoping that you'll find our session useful. Okay, so maybe Fiona, if you can just share your screen, we'll show you, we've put together a presentation for you about the Aptis test, and we'll now take you into more details. But before we start, as Amida mentioned, Fiona and I are part of the global assessments team, and our main focus is designing, developing and managing British Council tests. And one of these tests is the Aptis test. And today we'll tell you more specifically about the Aptis for Teachers test. Okay, so on the next slide, you can see, and sorry, here I'll just briefly mention what we'll cover in the session today. So we'll start with a brief overview of Aptis and its main features. Then Fiona will take you into more details of each component of the Aptis test and what to expect, what tasks we have in each of the skills, and we'll also give you some really useful tips on how to perform better in your test. Then we'll show you where to find more resources and information about the test. And our partners from the State Testing Center will tell you more about where, when, and how you can register to take Aptis for Teachers in Uzbekistan. And at the end, we will be happy to answer any questions you may have. So before we start, if you're wondering what's the British Council, what we do, the British Council is the United Kingdom's international organization for cultural relations and educational opportunities. Our main goal is to support people to learn English, get high quality education and internationally recognized qualifications. And we do this through developing and delivering English language tests worldwide. And Aptis is a key part of this activity. Okay, so Fiona, we can go to the next one. So just to give you a brief overview of Aptis, as Mida already mentioned, Aptis is developed by British Council assessment experts, headed by Professor Barry O'Sullivan. You may have heard about him before. It's based on more than 80 years experience in language testing and teaching around the world. And it provides reliable and accurate results for all 4 language skills, all mapped to the Common European Framework of Reference, which is the international standard for English proficiency. Aptis is trusted by governments and other institutions like universities, schools, ministries, regional governments in more than 85 countries. And globally, around 1.2 million people have taken Aptis. As I mentioned, it's a reliable assessment because we have ongoing control and monitoring standards to ensure that the test is reliable and accurate. And all questions in the test go through very extensive trialing and pre-testing before they're included in live tests, so that we can ensure that the test is of high quality. We have extensive research agenda and also validation by independent researchers. And I'll tell you a bit more about this at the end of my presentation. And for those of you who are interested, you can find all technical information on our website. And at the end of our presentation, I'll tell you exactly where you can find this. Okay. As I mentioned, if we can describe Aptis in 3 words, it's reliable, it's secure, and it's efficient testing. You get quick and accurate results, which I believe is very important. It's delivered on a computer, but it's marked by human examiners, and it's validated by research. Okay, there are 5 components in the Aptis test. We have 1 component for each language skill: listening, reading, writing, speaking, and a grammar and vocabulary module. And to tell you a bit more how the scoring works, so reading, listening, grammar, and vocabulary components are marked automatically within the system. Speaking and writing are marked by our team of trained examiners, and we have a lot of built-in monitoring and quality assurance standards to ensure that our examiners mark accurately. So, for example, your speaking and your writing tests all consists of 4 tasks each. Each task is marked by a different examiner so that they are not biased by your performance in the other tasks. And this is called the halo effect. So with this marking system, we eliminate the halo effect and we increase the accuracy and the reliability of the speaking and writing scores. Okay, and Fiona, we can go to the next one. Yep, so for this one, here on this slide, you can see an example of a candidate report and what scores you will get, so how the scores are presented. And Fiona, if you click through the animation here, you'll get a numerical score from 0 to 50 for each of the skills, including the grammar and vocabulary module. Then you will also get a CEFR level for each of the skills and an overall CEFR level based on your performance in all 4 skills. So this is how the results are reported. And I think at this point, I will hand over to Fiona to tell us more about Aptis for Teachers and its components.
Thank you so much, Antoinetta, and thank you, Nadira, also for inviting us today. And good evening, everybody. And I hope you can all see the screen share okay, because I have a vision of several things on my screen. So,
it's fine.
So, at this stage, I'm going to go on to talk more specifically about Aptis for Teachers. And I have around 20-25 minutes to do a whistle-stop tour. So I'll try and get this, just click off that, permissions there. Okay, so this variant, the Aptis for Teachers variant, has been designed specifically for the education sector. Which means that the task scenarios are based on schools or educational institutions or teaching contexts in general. So in that respect, it may feel more familiar to teachers, which is actually quite helpful when you're taking a test if the subject matter is in familiar terrain or sounds familiar to you. So one thing to point out also is that the test is helpful for teachers in any subject who carry out some or all of their teaching in English. It's not designed specifically for teachers of English, but for all teachers who are working in English. And if any of you have heard before that there are other variants of Aptis, just to say that Aptis for Teachers is similar in many respects in terms of the parts, the timings, but it has some differences. So if you have a look at this general overview, just to get a real bird's eye view of how long the test takes and how it's divided, there you can see some information about the 4 skills plus the grammar and vocabulary, which we call the core. And there you have the approximate timings. So I think most colleagues who are watching this today will know that Aptis is linked to the Common European Framework of Reference. And I'm sure that you have quite a lot of background knowledge about this. I believe in Uzbekistan that you need to demonstrate a level in the C range, at least over the B2 range, which you can see there. So with the C range being proficient users, we sometimes refer to it as proficient use, and over, so B2 independent user. So I understand that you're aiming for somewhere at the over that B2 barrier. So that's what we're going to focus on today. For more specific information on the CEFR, I've got this slide here, and I've highlighted in red those 2 levels, if you want to call them levels, B2 and C1, because I think that's the main area of focus today. If you don't already have access to a grid like this official CEFR self-assessment grid is available on the Council of Europe website and also on the British Council website on our .org pages. And it's a great source of information about what we're looking for at those different levels. And one of the main differences that we'll come back to today at several points is the idea of moving at the B2 level, so moving from what is essentially familiar into unfamiliar territory. Okay, so moving from more simple ideas on subjects and themes which are familiar to you to crossing over into areas which are more abstract and less familiar. And you'll see that when we look at some tasks later on. So we're going to go straight in now to having a look at some of the tasks and having a look at what we're assessing and some tips about ways that you might like to think about preparing, and also some watch outs about things to avoid, which can also be helpful, I know. Given our time limitation today, we can only give you a guided tour of the test. And when we look at tasks, we're only going to focus on part 3 and part 4 of each skill, because they contain the elements at the upper end of the scale. So at the B1 and the B2 level, which you'd need to be clearing to be able to then go into the C range. So let's start with listening. And the listening looks like this. So the listening is one of the longer parts of the test, one of the longer components, 55 minutes, 4 parts. And you'll notice there that we're moving from recognizing specific information in a listening text to the more complex skill of inferencing, which is drawing a conclusion about what you hear, or going beyond simply recognizing the words that are being said. That might be one way to put it. So if we jump into part 3, okay, so this is the task which is testing to make sure that you're clearing the B1 level. Okay, it's a monologue comprehension. And what you'll do here, what you can see here, is how we're going beyond looking for specific information. For example, what time does the train leave? The train leaves at 11:30, because that's what you heard on the text. To picking up on things like opinion or attitude, or what exactly the person is saying. What is it they're really saying beyond their words? So you're not just listening to the string of words here. And that's important to remember when I go on to just mention a couple of tips that can be helpful for preparation. Intonation. So for example, I'm sure you're all familiar with intonation and how intonation works in English, but the difference between, for example, if I say we have the association meeting tomorrow, and if I say, I can't wait, Or we have the association meeting tomorrow, do you remember? And I say, I can't wait. Okay, two very different meanings. And that's the type of nuance that you'll be picking up on here beyond the words that are actually said. Into part 4, and here we're matching opinions, and you have more than one speaker. So again, you're in terms of the subject matter or the topic, you're in largely familiar terrain. So in terms of the vocabulary, the topic, and here you can see parents talking about children, children's health, but you can see how the task itself is becoming more complex. So there are 2 speakers, and you're asked to assign opinions to one or the other or both of them. So here the focus is on higher level skills, such as moving backwards and forth to construct meaning and discourse in the text. Okay, so it's not just that you're listening to a word, capturing it and saying that's the answer. You're having to move backwards and forwards, as you do in real life when you listen, to construct the meaning. So checking the relevance and applicability of what's been said in previous parts of the message. So is he saying it? Is she saying it? Or actually, are they both saying it, but in different ways? Okay, so that's the more complex task in the Aptis listening. Now, a few tips. And the first one I know is easier said than done. I'm saying very simply there, try to relax. I know it's easier said than done, but people often find listening tests quite stressful. And this is completely understandable because it can feel quite unnatural to hear a disembodied voice and you've got some pressure there because you're doing a test and you don't have the opportunity to ask for clarification like you might in a real life situation. And in fact, this type of listening can be stressful even in our own languages. And if you just think to, if you're listening for some important information in a noisy train station, for example, that's quite stressful. If you feel you can't hear properly, you can't ask anybody to repeat it. And even in face-to-face context, sometimes if we're in unfamiliar terrain and we don't quite understand what's going on, even that can be stressful. So it's completely normal that listening, in that respect, it's normal that people often find listening tests stressful. However, that anxiety can bring down a kind of filter. We call it the affective filter, which is a sort of barrier, which actually makes the text more difficult to understand. We kind of, I suppose, one way to put it is that we kind of close off our ability to listen. We're sort of closed to it rather than open to it. So if you can relax a bit, if you can just be more open to what you hear, it can help you make sense of it more easily. Just let go a little bit of that anxiety. And also remember that there are some advantages, like seeing the questions in advance. This kind of activates your brain for that topic. So it's you might not realize this is happening, but as soon as you see the question, your brain will be starting to think of language that you possibly expect to hear, words that you might expect to hear. Your brain will already be working by that stage. So as you move through the listening tasks, keep listening. Remember that you're focusing on finding meaning in texts from other clues too. So you've got your intonation, there are all sorts of other things going on, as I'm sure all of the colleagues watching this webinar know. So don't worry or don't stop listening if you miss a word or even if you miss a couple of words. Just keep listening and try and sort of keep open to the main message. What's the main message coming through here? You don't need to understand every word. And that last point really reiterates what I've just said. Remember that isolated words take second place to finding meaning across speech from the speakers. Okay, the isolated words is more in task 1, which we haven't looked at, which is at A1 level. But once you're onto your parts 3 and 4, then you're looking for a much richer type of meaning. And just one other thing to add, which isn't on my slide, use parts 1 and 2 to kind of relax into the listening. You know, it's a great thing to go through a couple of much easier tasks, which probably most of you taking this test will find quite easy. that can kind of relax you into the listening and take the nerves away. Just on tips, I was just going to suggest, and I'm sure most of you already do this, perhaps it sounds obvious, but you know, I think today there are a whole range of podcasts from wherever you normally get your podcasts from, free podcasts on all sorts of topics. Some of them are with one speaker, some of them are conversations. So maybe as you go into the weeks before your Aptis test, you know, just searching around in your podcast store, in the store that you use, finding a few podcasts, maybe sometimes listening to ones that you're interested in because that's more fun, right? And other times you could maybe choose a couple that you're not so interested in, just to see how it feels to be listening to something that you don't have, you know, it's a bit more like an exam situation, but just to lose that fear of listening. Okay, and there's all sorts of material on the internet, as I'm sure you know. On to speaking. Okay, so here we have 12 minutes, so it's very short, but sometimes it can feel like a very long time, right? Speaking, and in this case, speaking into a microphone. So the component is made up like this. And again, you can probably pick up on that pattern as we go through A1 through to the top end B2 task, moving from familiar to more abstract and less familiar topics and tasks. Okay, and again, I would say here, use parts 1 and 2 to warm yourself up, to increase your confidence, just to get used to the sound and feel of speaking into the test microphone. Okay, so tasks 1 and 2 in that respect also give you some time to give your best performance when you come on to tasks 3 or part 3 and 4. So we'll jump into part 3. Okay, and here we're looking at comparing, giving reasons, and speculating. So here you can see a task. Tell me what you see in the 2 pictures. So comparing and contrasting, which I'm sure is quite familiar to you all. So you're comparing, contrasting what you see, and as we go through the stages, we move away from the immediate, which is what you can actually see, it's more descriptive, and we move into imagining or speculating. So what would it be like to teach in one of these 2 classes? Okay, so it's more of an advanced skill, not just describing what's in front of you. Giving reasons for what you think. So why do I think it would be, you know, why do I think it might be harder work in the picture on the right-hand side, for example, if that's what I think. And then we move on to expressing an opinion on a specific question and giving a rationale. Okay, so that's where you need to enter, that's where you're coming into more complex task. Okay, so what's your opinion on that? How can you express your opinion on that? Part 4. Okay, so here we're discussing personal experience and opinion on an abstract theme. And in this task, you have a minute to prepare what you're going to say. I'll put the task up. A bit like you might in real life before you speak in a meeting, you know, for example, if you were speaking in a meeting or some other forum, actually, as you're listening to what people say, let's imagine people are debating a topic or a decision. In real life, you're mentally, you actually might physically make a couple of notes before you give your opinion, or in your mind, you're organizing what you want to say. So that task really replicates that real life task. Okay. And here, what you really need to focus on is joining your ideas together. And there you can see discourse markers, that you're being coherent. So is what you're saying making sense? Is it cohesive? Is it all stuck together in the correct way? And here you're going into topics which are slightly more abstract. So, for example, you know, in this one for this question, how do you feel about being observed by a colleague or a manager? And you'll also notice that they're all on topics which are related to schools, teachers, educational institutions. So here I might say, something like, and I'm going to emphasize the words that I want you to pick up on. I wouldn't say it in this way if I was in the exam situation, but I might say something like, well, being observed in class can sometimes feel stressful, although I believe it's an important part of teacher development. This is because another pair of eyes in the classroom can help you see your practice from a different perspective, which is helpful. Okay, so there's an example, and you'll have picked up on the words I'm emphasizing there just to show how the piece is all connected. My ideas are connected. And they're not connected only using words like and so. Okay, so at this level, we're looking for a more advanced level of connecting your ideas and connecting your argument. Okay. So some top tips here, and these are based on real reasons why sometimes candidates lose points in this part of the test. So one, please, at the beginning of the test, do a sound check. Make sure that your microphone and all of the equipment works, because I think probably one of the most devastating things is going through a test and then it turns out it hasn't been properly recorded, okay? Especially if you gave a really good performance. So do remember to do a sound check. And in your test centre, your invigilator, I'm sure would help you do that. Speak clearly. Now, I know, again, sounds a bit obvious, but I just want to say here that do be aware of technology. And in the same way that if you're speaking on the phone in real life, you may speak more clearly than you do when you're speaking to your friend in a cafeteria, for example. So speak clearly. Clearly doesn't mean excessively slow, okay? So you don't have to speak like this. You should not speak like that, okay? Because that will also affect your mark. But just be aware that when you're speaking on technology, as in real life, it requires you need to make an effort to make sure that you're clear and you're not mumbling or, that the volume's too low. Focus on the question and answer it. So however good what you say is, if you haven't addressed the question, so the questions before were around how do you feel about being observed, etc., make sure that you keep coming back to the question and answer the question. Use the full amount of time. So lots of, well, not lots, but one of the reasons candidates sometimes don't score as much as they could on speaking is because they don't use the full time, so they're kind of in a way they underperform. So for tasks 2 and 3, you're looking at speech times of 45 seconds, and then the long term, which is part 4 that we just looked at, you have 2 minutes. Now 2 minutes doesn't sound like very much, but when you're speaking by yourself into a microphone, actually 2 minutes is quite a long time. And that's why I would suggest one of my pieces of advice is, as you're again, maybe a couple of weeks before the exam, as you're coming up to your exam day, a great way to practice is actually making yourself speak. Choose topics, any topics, it doesn't matter. You can record yourself on your smartphone, so you get used to speaking into a machine, let's say, so you're not speaking to another person, you're not speaking to your friend. And just get an idea, get a feel. What does it feel like speaking for 45 seconds? And what does it feel like speaking for 2 minutes? And just set yourself every day for 5 days before the exam, for example, give yourself a topic, switch on your recorder and speak for 2 minutes, so that you have that kind of reference for what 2 minutes is like when you're speaking by yourself with no feedback from another person. Okay, and that can just build up your confidence a bit on the day. You just get, sometimes we feel a bit silly when we're just speaking to ourselves and there's no feedback or from another person. So that can be a good way just to kind of work with that anxiety if you have it. Don't overuse simple constructions. Don't overuse simple words like as, and, so. Okay, get some variety. Okay, so don't say I don't like being observed and I think it causes me stress, and I don't think it really helps me develop. So I try to avoid it. So I think you get the message. Okay. And I had one more piece of advice on the comparison of pictures. If you do a search, I say Google, but on any if you use any search engine for image, there are image banks which have free images, which you're probably familiar with. And if you just choose a subject like I don't know, class, whatever you want, any subject, and you search for images and just choose a couple of the usually hundreds of images that come up, and just give yourself a practice. Give yourself a practice. How, if this was in my exam, how would I compare them? How would I describe and then compare them? Okay, and that can be a really useful way just to give yourself a little bit of practice before the exam. Okay. Oh, I've still got more tips here. More tips here. So avoiding simple sentences, which I think I demonstrated all of that already. Okay, on to reading. How am I doing for time? Okay, so reading. Here you have, we've got 35 minutes for reading, and again you'll see that progression through the different levels. Let's jump into part 3. Okay, so short text comprehension. And so this part here is testing your ability to read and understand short texts. And you have to choose 7 words. It's a drag and drop function, very easy to manage. And you're having to choose 7 words from 10 options. And that's to check that your comprehension of the text, okay? But it's paragraph level as opposed to longer text level. Task 4, we come on to the longer text. So this is where you're having to show that you can understand and connect the ideas between different paragraphs, okay? So not just within one paragraph, but you're joining up across a whole text. So here you have a longer text, and it's around 750 words. I don't know if you're accustomed to working with that type of word count, but you can, later on, if you just look at any text that you're working with and get an idea of how long that is. So around 750 words, and you will read 8 headings, okay? And you have to choose 7. So you have to match the heading to the paragraph. Obviously, there's an extra one which doesn't match any of the paragraphs. And this is designed to test your ability to read and understand longer text. Okay. So you'll be looking for things there like similar words, similar ideas, shared topics. Okay, those are things which indicate that there are connections backwards and forwards across the text. What are we saying for tips on reading? Really a bit like listening. So focus on meaning rather than getting too worried about unknown individual words, or even, if there's a whole phrase somewhere that you don't understand, just keep going past it and look for the meaning. And connections. Okay, so connecting your ideas, words, topics. How are they being connected? Are they being connected in contrast? Are they being connected because they're similar? Are they 2 different examples of the same thing? And use your time in a way that makes sense. Obviously, that last part with 750 words is a more complex task, is going to take quite a bit longer than task 1, for example. Okay, so as in all parts, your parts 3 and 4, give yourself more time, but particularly part 4. And if you get stuck, remember you can always come back. So don't get too worried if you're completely stuck on your last choice, which one is the extra one and which one is the real one. You can always come back. On to writing. don't know if you can hear, it's suddenly started raining really heavily here in Madrid. I'm not sure if you can hear it through the, it sounds really loud to me, but hopefully you can't hear it. Okay, so on we go to writing. Okay, and here we have our 50-minute component, so it's another long one. And again, you'll see that you're going from individual words, personal information, then going into 3 words, still quite short chunks of writing, of written text. And then as you go into part 4, you've got register, formal and informal, short text, 40 to 50 words, and then a longer text, which is 120 to 150 words. So again, one of my, I'll probably say it towards the end, but a few weeks as you're coming up to your exam and preparing for it, get a feel of what it feels like to write 150 words, what it's like to type 150 words, and you know how you do that, you know, working with those time frames. I'll say something a bit more about the timing in a minute. So task 3, there's 3 written responses, and these are it's what like a social network interaction, like a kind of chat room, that type of thing. So you receive 3 questions, you have to respond to them, and we would recommend that if you that you don't spend much more than 10 minutes on this section. So assuming that you're spending less on the first sections, don't spend too much on this because they're still relatively short pieces of language. Okay, and you can see that you know, why did you decide to come? What's the most interesting thing? And what do you think is the most difficult part of teaching? So there's a kind of progression there. It's all within your area of teaching, education, conferences, and you're moving on there to expository writing, which is, again, you're saying, you know, why do you think it's most, what do you think is most difficult? Okay. Then we go on to task 4, okay, and for this one, we would be recommending that you spend around 25 to 30 minutes, okay, so the bulk of your time when you come to the reading task, when you come to part 4 of the writing task, this is where you need to put most of your resource, let's say your time, your mental resource as well, okay. So there are 2 tasks there. And you can see them. I'm imagining you can read them on the screen there perfectly well. So one is an informal email. So they're based on the same theme. So at a teaching conference in this case, okay. There's a notice about a change, and that idea of a change, I think, is a fairly standard feature in this part. So first you're writing to a friend about how you feel about that change, which also means that there isn't enough seating for everybody, for as many people as there was, you know, as had been planned in that particular presentation, for example. So you're writing them an email, and then you decide to write an email to the organizer of the conference. So obviously that's where you have your shift in register. You're going from your informal to your formal, from your friend to an unknown person, conference organizer. And you're writing about your feelings there, 120 to 150 words, okay? So that one, as I say, you need to give yourself longer. You need to bring in, I think, again, I would use this word variety in terms of your structures, in terms of how you write, because you'll be assessed on grammatical, so range and accuracy. So it's not just about accuracy, but with grammar and vocabulary, with the expression, it's about the range, okay? That you have a range of features, you have a range of discourse markers, you have a range of vocabulary, and that what you write is cohesive. So are you making sense? Does it have a logical flow, okay? So that's your task 4, and you know, that's where you're also giving your opinion, you know, saying how you feel about something. Maybe you're saying what you think the organizer should do, whatever you come up with there. Tips for writing, really important, this one. make sure that you fully understand the task. Even if you have the best piece of writing out there, if you haven't properly addressed the task, you'll lose points. Okay, and that's, you know, that's not just because it's a test of English. I mean, that's the same with any writing, with any, you know, in any university course of study or school. If you don't answer the question when you're given a set task or assignment to write, however good what you write is, you'll lose points. So take the time to make sure that you fully understand. That's similar, so stay on topic, don't go too far off topic. Look after your grammar, your spelling, your punctuation, length. Okay, so I think the point that we'd like to make here is that you make it an easy read on the marker. Okay, so it's not too long, it's not too short, it's interesting. You have enough variety of language for it to be interesting, you have a variety of lengths of sentences. Okay, so it's easy for your marker to read and understand and respond to as a real piece of writing. Yeah, that's a well-written email. Variety of sentence structures. Remember the difference between formal and informal. Okay, so the way you write to your friend will be quite different from the way you write to the conference organizer, which doesn't mean that you won't be polite to the conference organizer, and you'll be polite, you're writing that you're not, you know, I don't think you'll be rude even if you want to make a complaint. Okay, you're still going to be polite, but it's a different way of writing. Okay, you might, you know, just to think of a very common thing with your friend, you're likely to be using shortened forms, you know, don't, whereas in your formal piece, you're more likely to be using full words, etc., etc. And avoid SMS spelling, okay, even in the friendly text. I say that because a lot of people, it's something that happens and people do ask us about it. So even in the email to your friend, so it's not a WhatsApp, it is an email, and we do want to test your English in the most complete way possible. So try to avoid SMS spelling, okay? And allow yourself time. So in that 25 to 30 minutes that I just alluded to, make sure you have a bit of time to plan what you're going to write, okay? So you know, just note down your main ideas, write it and give you time to review it, to read it a couple of times. Does it all make sense? Does it have any typos? Okay, which I'm sure we all do in our first couple of times we read something. So that's all from me on this section, and just aware of time there, we've gone slightly over. So I'm going to hand back to my colleague Antoinetta to talk about resources.
Thank you, Fiona. Thanks, this was really useful. I'll tell you a bit more where you can find more resources and information about the test as part of your preparation. And you should start from the British Council Uzbekistan website, which was recently refreshed. And when you go to britishcouncil.uz, click on Take an Exam, and then choose Aptis for Teachers delivered by the State Testing Center. And you'll see this page here on the left. And there is a special section which is called Prepare for Aptis. So in this section, you will find a lot of information for each of the components. So for reading, listening, speaking, and writing, and the grammar and vocabulary component, you'll find a lot of information of the task types and also what is tested in each task type. And on the next slide, you can see that, for example, if you click on the reading test, you will be taken to our global website where you can watch a video on, like an explainer video of what is the reading test, and then you can take a demo test. So I really recommend that you do this. Take a demo test, watch the explainer videos, and keep in mind that the demo tests for reading and listening are for Aptis General, so there may be some differences in the format with Aptis for Teachers. However, I still recommend that you do them because they are very important, and you'll see how the Aptis platform looks, and you'll be able to practice in a real environment. So in any case, you should try all demo tests for each component. Okay, and then something which is brand new and we just published it yesterday is the Aptis for Teachers Candidate Guide. And I highly recommend that you read this guide very carefully because it has all the information that you need to know about the Aptis Teachers Test. You'll find information for each of the component, all task types within the component, an example of each task type, so similar to what Fiona was sharing on the screen, but with more examples for the other tasks as well. And you'll also find the marking criteria for each task so that you know how your performance will be assessed for each of the tasks. And you can again download the Aptis for Teachers Candidate Guide from our website of the British Council in Uzbekistan. So you can find it there. And here, as I mentioned at the beginning, for those of you who are interested to know more about the research behind Aptis, we have a few very interesting resources on our global website, which is britishcouncil.org/Aptis. We have a research section, and there you can find the technical manual and test development approach document for Aptis. In the technical manual, we describe all tasks again and what we assess at each level. There is also a paper on how the Aptis scores are linked to the CEFR, and we have published a number of validation studies from different researchers. And I noticed that some of you asked about the results and scoring and how the scoring works. Well, this page here on our global website about results and scoring explains in more details how the scoring works. And we have a document again, which you can access on this page, which shows you, I think it's called the scoring document for Aptis, and there you can find more information about the Aptis scores and how they align to the CEFR, and that will give you a better idea and understanding of what you need to achieve for each component in order to get to the level that you need. Okay, and I think at this point, I will hand over to our partners from the State Testing Center so that they can tell you more about when, where, and how you can register and take Aptis for Teachers.
Thank you, Fiona. Thank you, Antoinette. Just a quick question to both of you. I know that you have to leave for another meeting, both of you. Are you okay to stay a bit longer and probably several questions because there are some?
Yeah, fine by me.
Okay, so Avazbek and Nasibek, over to you.
Okay, greetings to you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being interested in Aptis for Teachers test. As you know, that Aptis test is increasing in popularity among teachers in Uzbekistan, and British Council and the State Test Center are jointly conducting the test, and those achieving C1 level of CFR in this test will get 15 to 30% salary bonuses. And now I'm going to give some information how to register for Aptis test. And registration process is very straightforward, and you can apply for Aptis test online. I have to go to www.dtm.uz, and this is the official website of the State Test Center, and you have to choose foreign language department. And after that, you can see different things, different web pages, and then you have to choose Aptis for Teachers. And after that, you can see personal cabinet, registration, note for applicants, and test format, and frequently asked questions, and demo tests. So, and you have to click on the registration. And then you can see some personal information. So you can see the passport page, which is proper or improper. And you have to write down all the information about yourself, of course, and picture. So be aware about the size of the picture as well. And then just short note about registration procedure. So go to www.dtm.uz and select the foreign language department window, and select the Aptis test teachers page, and select the registration page. And you have to enter your personal information correctly in sequence, and pay attention to the photo. So you have to be aware about the background and formal attire and settings and something like that. And go to your personal cabinet and download your application and payment receipt in PDF form and print it out, because you have to pay for the test no later than 3 working days. You must pay the amount indicated on the payment receipt by entering the invoice number at any bank's cash desk or existing electronic payment systems. And payment amount is 2.5 times the base calculation amount. I think this is all about how to register for Aptis test. Okay, so this is relatively straightforward procedure for candidates who want to apply for Aptis for teachers test. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nasandeep. Anything to add from Avazbek, or shall we proceed to the questions then?
So we can proceed.
We can't hear you, Avazbek.
Yeah, we can proceed to the questions now.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Yeah, we can proceed because he managed to cover everything about the registration process.
Thank you very much, colleagues. Well, there are a couple of questions, as Antoinette mentioned, about this grading scale or this scoring. Yeah, Yulduz Mahmudova is going to take Aptis test in February, so she's keen on this scoring for the exam, as well as the Raboba Bakulova. So ladies, was the information covered in the presentation enough? And the links we provided, was it enough for you, or would you like to explain your question or get more information about that? Just raise your hand. Okay.
I was just going to, Umida, should I just add a couple of things on, just firstly to say that the information which is on all of the information on scoring, including the technical guide on how Aptis is scored, which was brought out, I think it was just last year in 2020. There's lots of really comprehensive and detailed information there, more detailed than we could probably give now on this forum. But just a couple of points that I would add, which is one, that if scores, so where falls just below a CEFR level, that's where you'll have noticed that although we talked about the 4 skills, at the beginning we saw there was a section called the core, or I think I called it the core, which said grammar and vocabulary. So there's an extra mechanism in there which comes into play if a candidate's score is just really just below a CEFR level. And then depending on how that core score, which is a sort of anchor for the whole scoring process, goes, that would either push the candidate's score up or down, which sometimes means that, for example, things happen like 2 candidates with the same score could possibly get 2 different levels on their CEFR, because it would then, that decision then comes back, and it's all hugely scientific, okay? And that's what our assessment research group and our assessment specialists work on. But just to say that there are, the system is complex, which is absolutely standard for any test. And also to say that the raw score, so the scale score, is not equivalent necessarily to the number of correct items, okay? And again, that's a common industry practice. where raw scores, so that's the sort of original numbers per score, are then converted through to the scale scores for reporting, and that's converted to the CEFR. So it's a complex process, but on the material that Antoinette pointed to just a few minutes ago is really comprehensive, and I think if you can take the time to read through those documents carefully, I don't think it leaves any questions unanswered.
Thank you, Fiona. We also had a question about the listening part, and my colleague Andre already replied to that. And the question was just to, to voice it for everyone. How many times can the recording be played in the listening section? It's just once. And Andre shared the Aptis candidate guide. So please, colleagues, follow the link and read the information. It's really comprehensive, as my colleague said, and you will find lots of details and information there. I'm just looking for the questions regarding the content before we go to the registration and some administrative questions. Colleagues, you can raise your hands while I'm looking for.
Umida,
Yep.
Sorry to interrupt. I think one question I saw myself actually when I was just scrolling a second ago, and I think there was a question around how the scores are presented, like if it's similar to IELTS, which it is in the sense that everybody gets a CEFR level, i.e. it's not a pass-fail type of level test. So just, I think that was probably became clear in the presentation with the certificate that Antoinette showed on one of her slides, but just in case it's not clear, that so your CEFR level will be on the certificate. Now, whether it's the level you want is a different question, or whether it's the level you need, but it's not like you pass or fail in those terms.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was the question from the rapport. Okay. So there was a question about the speaking test from, again from the Rabo, who took Aptis tests with us. And I would like to ask my colleague Andre to reply to that question. The question is, I've taken tests and wanted to share my opinion about that, about the speaking part, excuse me. I think it would be better if speaking test is done in a separate room rather than in the same room when everyone is taking tests. It's a bit inconvenient as someone speaks while others are trying to concentrate on exam from other skills. Andre, would you like to reply to that?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I can provide the answer from the delivery perspective, right? But then, of course, colleagues can complete this reply from the more like a research point of view. Yeah, when it comes to delivery, basically, I think the structure of the test proposes that you, unlike IELTS test, basically, you need to prove your fluency. And there are sections where you are just talking and expressing your own opinions. And basically, when you use your language, you do it in a public environment most of the time. And personally, I like IELTS much better, although like we deliver a lot of IELTS. And Aptis actually, in my personal opinion, is kind of designed to better confirm your actual fluency in terms of the language, like, you know. So I mean, personally, I would be comfortable talking while sitting next to someone, like in a cafe or something, or just expressing my own ideas or opinions. It's not necessarily like an interview part, because, you know, the approaches can be very different. And when you talk to when you talk about IELTS, it's more like interviewing type of speaking test where you are being interviewed, while in Aptis you are more like expressing your fluency. Colleagues, would you like to add to this?
If I may, I would just add that obviously how the test is set up in your particular context is not for me to. I've never seen it done in Uzbekistan and so on, and it's not for me to say. But yeah, I think generally where the tests are set up so that there is a bit, so that that there are, possibly fewer candidates in a room doing the test. Those are logistical things which I can't really comment on. But generally we find that the test works well, candidates perform well, they perform at their level. And I think it's something possibly a bit like the listening, where speaking into a microphone anyway makes us feel a little bit self-conscious. And if there's somebody, if the room's full of other people, well, obviously that makes it it's not a completely natural situation. And that's why I suggest some exercises as you move towards the test day, where you're just practicing that slightly artificial activity of speaking into a machine and not worrying too much about what's around you, but just developing the confidence to speak confidently in your test, not worry, not focus on who's outside, just focus on the test. Understood, it's not 100% natural environment for speaking, but it works very well as a test. So I would just add that, Andre, if that makes sense to you.
Yes, absolutely. And basically, from the delivery point of view, I should also say that part of the requirement for the test setup is the provision of noise cancelling headphones, which actually also ensure that while you personally might not feel very convenient, like talking with people next to you, in terms of the grading and in terms of the actual recording of what you are saying, it's very straightforward, and these noises do not conflict with what you are saying, because if that is a case at any point, these instances are flagged, and we would have to contact the test taker and actually request them to resit the speaking part, because these could not be evaluated. But we normally do not have these things because the recording is usually very clear.
Great.
Thank you, colleagues. Thank you for your responses, and thank you for your question and feedback. We do care about your feedback, and we do listen to all our customers. So we will take everything into consideration. There is a question from Sarvin Nos about the expiration date for Aptis certificate. Who can take this question? Is there any expiration date for the certificate? Is there a certificate?
Fiona, you're on mute. Would you like to say, or should I?
I was just going to say, I can't see my colleague Antoinetta on the screen anymore, so I'm not sure if she would.
I'm here.
Yes,
I just wasn't sure if you'd like to answer, because I've lost
right
sight
next
of
to you.
Well,
I can reply, or Antoinetta.
Andre, you reply. That's fine, and we can.
Yeah, sure. So basically, the Aptis certificates don't expire. However, because simply it's a statement of your language capacity or capability at this particular point. But our language never stays the same. If especially if you are not in a natural speaking environment. So if you practice more, your language becomes much better. And then, of course, you can redo your test and get even better scores. Or if you don't practice enough, your language can actually deteriorate, unfortunately. And so in many cases, it is up to the receiving organization, or up to it might be a business owner or the organization that requires you to complete the test, that after 2 years or so, they might require you to redo the test to ensure that your level stays the same, especially if language is your business crucial skill that you should have, like maybe you're a pilot, or you teach other people English, like stuff like that. So, but in terms of the actual expiration date, it does not have an expiry date on it.
I think I also need to add something from the point of view of State Test Center. Although test report form from the side of British Council will not expire, State Test Center also gives special certificate for those who achieve C level in this test to obtain 15 to 30% salary bonuses, and this certificate will actually expire in 3 years. So the certificate given by State Test Center will expire in 3 years.
Very important information. Thank you, Avazbek. I think I will ask you to answer the next questions as well. I mean, the colleagues from the testing center. So what's the cost of the test at the moment? What happens after payment? Let's take it in turn.
Yeah, the payment amount. The payment amount is 2.5 times the basic calculation amount. Currently, it is 617,500 sums. So you just need to pay this amount and you will attend the test. What happens after payment? So after doing the payment, you need to check if you have done the payment correctly or not. You will do it by clicking on the personal cabinet in our official website. So there you will find the information about your payment. If it says it is done and it actually lights green, your payment is accepted and you have a place to attend the test. If it's red, your payment is not done properly and you have to contact the State Test Center about your payment procedure. If you have done the payment correctly, you will see the test date, test venue, etc. in your your personal cabinet. And in terms of registration process, I can add that we don't have any fixed dates for future examinations, but I can say that we conduct examinations every month around the third week of the month. Candidates can find out the test date in this month only, not beforehand. So I think this covers the question.
Okay, and another question.
Umida?
Yes.
I was just wondering, because Antoinette and I have to leave very shortly, so maybe if there's just maybe one more question that we can take, and then I think we're going to have to leave the webinar.
An interesting question. Is there a chance to rehearse online before the real Aptis test from Alistair? Probably to say again that there are some. Yep, Antoinette, over to you.
Yeah, sure. Well, you can take a demo test on our website, and it's exactly like it will look like the real test in the browser. So this is how you can practice. So after the webinar, I think we will send links to all the resources that we just mentioned so that you can have a look at them and practice in your own time. But the demo tests are the best way to rehearse for the real test.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much, Fiona and Antoinette, for attending, for making this presentation and sharing this useful information with the teachers of English language in Uzbekistan. I can read the comments, and people say that it was very informative and it was very useful. So thank you very much, and looking forward to some future webinars.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Nadira, for having us on your channel, and thank you obviously our colleagues in Uzbekistan and Umida, and our colleagues and partners from the State Test Center. It's been lovely to be here today, and yeah, hopefully we can do something another day too. And wishing you all luck in your exam, in your Aptis for Teachers when you come to take it.
Thank you, Fiona, and thank you, Antoinette, for taking
Thank you.
time to talk to our audience today. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Good
you
luck
so much.
with
Thank
your
you,
Aptis
colleagues.
test.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay.
Just to
We'll stay for 5 more minutes, right? So there are a few questions about the
more questions. Yes.
administration, right?
Absolutely, yes. I think I will ask Avazbek and Nasimbek again. So some questions about, let me find this question. Can teachers pay for the test individually, or it should be arranged by the institution?
So the teachers can take the test individually. They can register by themselves. Nowadays, we don't have means for corporative registration. So teachers need to take the test individually.
Okay, thank you. Are you planning to arrange the test in other cities in Uzbekistan? Because at the moment it's only in Tashkent.
At the moment, the test is conducted only in Tashkent because we have equipped a computer lab for this test, and in regions we don't have such equipment yet. But in the future, we are going to arrange tests in Aptis tests in regions too.
And you won't be able to tell the dates at the moment, but in the coming nearest.
Yeah. In future,
Okay.
we will arrange tests in regions too.
Okay. Thank you. What's the venue? The question from Aelita. What's the venue?
The venue is the headquarters of State Test Center, the main building of our organization. It's in Bolshamol Street 12 in Yunusobod district of Tashkent.
Okay. I think that's it. Probably colleagues would like to raise their hands and voice the questions. If not, we can round up, I think. I think we can round up, Nadira.
Yes. Thank you so much. Yeah, I think you dealt with all the questions, and you've also we shared the link, right? So to the guide, so where they can read more about how it's scored and how and other technicalities of the test, right? So thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much, Umida, for moderating and for making this happen today. Thank you, colleagues. Avazbek, Amir Said, Andrei, who did I forget? Nasim.
Yeah, thank you.
Nasimbek, right? Thank you so much. Yes, I was really impressed by these tests, and I think it's a very unique, right? And I hope more and more people will start taking this test, and it will be kind of the help to have another perspective on testing, right? So that people are not stuck to IELTS and consider this as the benchmark of who you are, even, right, in Uzbekistan. So yeah, I think it was really useful to learn more about this particular test, and which is specifically designed for teachers. Thank you.
Exactly. Thank you. Just to add that we will send the email to all participants with all the links, and you will be able to find this information in your mailbox.